1849. 300 enslaved people walked out of the most inhumane slave prison in the American South, and by morning, the prison no longer existed. This was not a plantation. It was a holding facility for human beings labeled unmanageable, where bodies were starved, renamed, and sold only after their resistance was erased. The men who ran it believed iron schedules, locked gates, and isolation made rebellion mathematically impossible. They kept ledgers instead of names and insurance papers instead of mercy. Then the gates were found sealed from the outside. 2 overseers were trapped inside screaming for help that never came. By sunrise, slave catchers were already waiting, confident the escape would fail like all the others. They were wrong. The prison burned exactly as designed, just not for the people who designed it. What turned 300 prisoners into a coordinated force willing to erase the place entirely? And why did no one rebuild it afterward? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Dawn came gray and cold over the slave prison they called the Mouth. Isaiah Crowder stood in the yard waiting for roll call. His breath made small clouds in the air. Around him, 300 souls arranged themselves in silent rows. They knew better than to speak. The overseer walked along the lines with his ledger. He counted heads like livestock. His boots scraped against the dirt with each step. Nobody looked up. Nobody moved. Isaiah kept his eyes on the ground. He had learned this early. Looking up meant trouble. Looking down meant you might survive another day. The overseer stopped in front of him. Isaiah could smell tobacco and whiskey. Crowder. Yes, sir. You on corpse detail again? Yes, sir. The overseer moved on. Isaiah breathed quietly. Roll call continued down the line. When the counting finished, the overseer slammed his ledger shut. The sound cracked across the yard like a whip. Those assigned to field work, move out. Kitchen detail. Report to the cookhouse. Everyone else knows where they belong. The prisoners dispersed in practiced silence. Isaiah walked toward the back of the compound, past the barracks that smelled like sweat and sickness, past the punishment yard where the whipping post stood like a dead tree, past the storage sheds where grain rotted in barrels nobody bothered to seal properly. The dead house sat at the far edge of the property. It was a small building with no windows, just a door and 4 walls. Inside, bodies waited on wooden pallets, sometimes 2, sometimes 5. Last week there had been 8. Isaiah pushed open the door. 3 bodies lay covered with stained canvas. He recognized one by the shape. A woman named Dinah, who had coughed blood for months. The prison doctor never came. The overseers said medical care cost money they would not spend on temporary property. Isaiah uncovered the first body. An old man. His face looked almost peaceful. The cart stood against the wall. Isaiah loaded the bodies one at a time. They felt light. Everyone here starved slowly. The prison fed just enough to keep people breathing. Barely. He wheeled the cart toward the burial ground. The cemetery was not marked. No crosses, no stones, just rows of shallow graves dug into hard red clay. Isaiah had dug most of them himself. He began digging. The work was methodical. Push the shovel down, lift the dirt, throw it aside, repeat. His shoulders ached, but he kept moving. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. Remembering meant breaking. Isaiah had stopped breaking years ago. By midday, 3 graves were ready. He lowered the bodies down, covered them with earth, packed it flat with the back of his shovel. Nobody spoke words over the dead here. Words were forbidden unless an overseer asked a question. So Isaiah worked in silence, the way he always did. When he finished, he noticed coffin nails scattered in the dirt near the workshop. The prison carpenter had died 2 months ago. Nobody replaced him. The coffins he had built sat unfinished and rotting. Nails rusted in the mud. Isaiah picked up 3 nails. He wiped them clean against his pant leg, slipped them into the lining of his boot, where the leather had torn. He had been collecting nails for 6 weeks now. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared what a corpse handler did with his time. Evening came slow and heavy. The prisoners gathered in the yard for evening rations. A woman ladled stew from a huge iron pot. The stew was mostly water with bits of gristle floating in it. But it was hot. That counted for something. Isaiah took his bowl and sat against the barracks wall. He ate slowly, made each bite last. Across the yard, he saw Ruth Bell working near the cookhouse. She was old, maybe 60, maybe 70. Her hair had gone completely white, but her hands stayed steady as she ground herbs in a stone bowl. Ruth was the closest thing to a doctor anyone here had. She knew plants, knew what helped fever, and what stopped bleeding. The overseers let her work because she kept more people alive. Live property was still valuable. Dead property was just expense. Elias North sat nearby, whittling a piece of wood with a dull knife. He had been a boatman once, knew rivers and currents. Then his owner sold him south after he tried to run. The mouth swallowed him like it swallowed everyone. Martha June ate her stew standing up. Her son Caleb sat beside her. The boy was maybe 14, too young to be here. But the prison did not care about age. Martha had been sold after her owner died. Caleb came with her. They were kept together only because the paperwork listed them as a set. Isaiah watched patterns. He always watched patterns. The guards changed shifts at dusk. The new ones were lazier. They drank more, paid less attention. The oil barrels near the storage shed were kept full. The prison used oil for lamps, for waterproofing. For maintenance, nobody ever did. The barrels sat unguarded most nights. The kitchen kept food locked up, but the locks were old, rusted. A strong pull would probably break them. Small things, details, pieces of information that might never matter. But Isaiah collected them anyway, the same way he collected coffin nails. The guard who patrolled the western wall stumbled near the cookhouse. He reached out to steady himself against a post. His face looked pale, confused. He dropped his tin cup. It clattered against the stones. Then he fell to his knees. 2 other guards rushed over. They grabbed his arms, hauled him toward the overseer's quarters. The man's legs dragged behind him like wet rope. Isaiah looked up. Ruth Bell stood near the cookhouse door. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes met Isaiah's across the yard. Just for a moment. Then she turned back to her work, grinding herbs, measuring portions, moving with the same steady rhythm she always had. Isaiah set down his empty bowl. He stood slowly, walked back toward the barracks with the other prisoners. Nobody spoke. Nobody ever spoke after dark, unless they wanted the lash. But something had changed, something quiet, something that felt like the first breath before a fire catches. Isaiah lay on his wooden bunk and stared at the ceiling. Around him, men coughed and shifted in the dark. The barracks smelled like unwashed bodies and fear. He thought about the guard, about Ruth's eyes, about the nails hidden in his boot. He thought about patterns, and for the first time in years, Isaiah Crowder let himself imagine that patterns could be broken. The North Watch guard leaned against the wall. His head drooped forward, then snapped back up. He blinked hard like he was fighting sleep. Isaiah watched from the barracks doorway. 2 other guards sat on barrels near the gate. One had already slumped sideways. The other rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. Ruth Bell appeared beside Isaiah like a ghost. She moved without sound. "Foxglove," she whispered. Her voice was barely air. "In their evening coffee. Been putting it in for 3 weeks now. Little bits. So small they never noticed." Isaiah looked at her. Ruth's face showed no emotion, just the same weathered calm she always wore. "Tonight I used more," she continued. "Their hearts are slowing. They'll sleep soon. Most of them." "Most?" Can't poison what they don't drink. Ruth glanced toward the eastern watchtower. Young one there brought his own flask. Never touches prison coffee. Isaiah nodded slowly. He had noticed that guard, too. A newer hire, maybe 19. Still eager to prove himself. Ruth touched his arm once, then disappeared back into the shadows between buildings. Isaiah returned to the barracks, moved between the bunks where men pretended to sleep. He knelt beside Elias North. "Time," Isaiah whispered. Elias sat up without hesitation. He had been waiting. They all had been waiting. Isaiah reached into his boot, pulled out the coffin nails he had been collecting. But they were not nails anymore. Over weeks of careful work, he had filed them down, shaped them, turned them into something else. Keys, crude keys that might not work, but might. He passed them to Elias. "You know the locks?" "I know them." Elias had worked maintenance detail for months. He knew every door, every chain, every weak point in the compound. "The swamp route?" Isaiah asked. "Due west. There's a creek bed that runs north after 2 miles. Follow it until you hit the cypress stand. After that, the water gets deep, but the dogs can't track through it." Elias spoke quickly, precisely, like he had rehearsed this 1,000 times in his head. "Stay together for the first mile. Then split into groups of 20. Smaller groups move faster." Isaiah gripped his shoulder, moved to the next bunk. Martha June was already awake. Her son Caleb sat beside her. The boy's eyes were wide with fear and hope mixed together. "When the bell rings," Isaiah told them. "Not before." Martha nodded. Her hand found her son's, squeezed tight. Isaiah moved through the barracks, touched shoulders, whispered single words. "Ready? Wait. Soon." Nobody asked questions. Everyone knew their part. They had been planning in silence for weeks, using glances instead of words, hand signals instead of conversation. The overseers never noticed. They thought enslaved people were too broken to organize, too scared to resist. They were wrong. Isaiah stepped back outside. The North Watch guard had finally collapsed. He lay sprawled on the ground. His rifle had fallen beside him. The guard near the gate slept, sitting up. His chin rested on his chest. But the eastern watchtower still had light, still had movement. Isaiah crossed the yard, kept to the shadows. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his breathing stayed controlled, steady. He climbed the watchtower stairs. Each step creaked under his weight. He froze, listened. The young guard stood with his back turned, looking out over the fields beyond the prison walls. His rifle leaned against the railing. Isaiah's hands shook. He made fists, forced them still. He had never killed anyone deliberately, had buried hundreds of bodies, but never made one himself. The guard turned, saw Isaiah. His eyes went wide. "What are you—" Isaiah moved fast, faster than he knew he could. His hands found the guard's throat, squeezed. The guard thrashed, clawed at Isaiah's arms. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a wet, choking noise. Isaiah squeezed harder. His fingers dug into soft flesh. He felt the guard's pulse hammering against his palms, felt it slow, felt it stop. The body went limp. Isaiah lowered it to the floor. His hands were still shaking. He looked down at them like they belonged to someone else. He had killed a man, murdered him, strangled the life out of him with his bare hands. The thought should have horrified him, should have broken something inside. But Isaiah felt nothing, just hollow, just empty. He picked up the guard's rifle, left the body where it lay. Down in the yard, Elias had opened the first lock, then the second. Prisoners moved in the darkness like water flowing through cracks, silent, purposeful. Isaiah walked to the storage shed. The oil barrels sat in neat rows, 5 of them, each one full. He had thought about this moment for weeks, planned to spill just enough oil to create confusion, a distraction while they ran. But standing there with the guard's blood still warm on his hands, Isaiah realized distraction was not enough. The mouth had swallowed too many people, had broken too many bodies, had murdered too many souls. Distraction would not stop it, would not end it. Only fire would. Isaiah tipped the first barrel. Oil spread across the ground in a dark pool. He tipped the second, the third, kept going until all 5 barrels emptied their contents across the yard. The smell was overwhelming, sharp and chemical. He found a lantern hanging near the overseer's quarters, lit it with steady hands. Ruth appeared beside him again. She looked at the oil, at the lantern, at Isaiah's face. "You sure?" she asked. Isaiah thought about the bodies he had buried, the children who died from neglect, the men who were beaten until their minds broke, the women who disappeared into the overseer's quarters and came back destroyed. "I'm sure," Ruth nodded. "Then do it." Isaiah dropped the lantern. The oil caught instantly. Flames raced across the ground like living things. They climbed the storage shed walls, leaped to the barracks roof, spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Heat blasted Isaiah's face. He stumbled backward. The alarm bell started ringing. Frantic, desperate. Prisoners poured through the open gates. Some ran. Some walked quickly. Some helped others who could barely stand. 300 souls moving toward freedom. The overseer's quarters erupted in flames. Someone screamed inside, pounded on a locked door. Isaiah had locked it from the outside, used one of his carved keys. He listened to the screaming, felt nothing. Elias grabbed his arm. "We have to go, now." Isaiah looked back one last time. The mouth was burning, really burning. The flames reached toward the sky like judgment made visible. He turned and ran. Behind them, the prison collapsed into itself. Timbers crashed. Walls fell. Everything that had held them captive turned to ash and smoke. The night sky glowed red. 300 people disappeared into the darkness. Their shadows stretched long across the fields, then vanished completely. The mouth burned until morning. By dawn, nothing remained but blackened stones and memories made of smoke. Isaiah reached the outer gate first. His lungs burned from running. Sweat poured down his face, despite the cool night air. Behind the iron bars, someone screamed. He stopped. The sound cut through the roar of flames, high-pitched, desperate. "Please!" the voice cracked. "Somebody! The door won't open." Isaiah recognized that voice. It belonged to Crawford, the senior overseer, the man who supervised punishment details, who decided how many lashes, how little food, who lived or died. "God help me," another voice joined the first. Younger, probably Reed, the assistant overseer. "Lord Jesus, please!" The flames had spread to the administrative building. Smoke poured through broken windows. The men inside were trapped. The interior doors had been locked from the outside. Isaiah had made certain of that. He stood at the gate with his hand on the iron bars. Heat radiated from the burning structures. The metal was already warm to the touch. "I hear someone!" Crawford's voice grew louder, closer. "We're in here! We're locked in!" Isaiah could open the gate, could let them out. His carved keys still worked. The locks had not changed. His hand moved toward the keyring at his belt. "Isaiah!" Ruth appeared at his shoulder. Blood stained her dress, not her own. "Keep walking. They'll burn," Isaiah said. His voice sounded strange, flat. "Good." Isaiah looked at her. Ruth's face showed no mercy, no hesitation, just certainty. "Please," Crawford screamed. The sound turned into choking. "The smoke! I can't!" Reed started praying, loud, frantic. "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." "We should let them out," Caleb spoke from behind Isaiah. Martha's boy. His voice shook. "We can't just—" "Yes, we can." Elias appeared. His jaw was set hard. "They never showed mercy. Why should we?" Because we're not them, Caleb said. Tonight we are. Elias crossed his arms. Tonight we're exactly what they made us. Martha pulled her son back. Don't watch, baby. Don't listen. But everyone was listening. The screaming grew worse. More desperate. Crawford's voice dissolved into wet coughing. Reed abandoned prayer and just screamed wordlessly. Lock it. Ruth touched Isaiah's arm. Make sure. Isaiah pulled out his keys, found the one that fit the outer gate's main lock. His hands did not shake this time. He turned the key, felt the mechanism click into place. The gate was already closed, but now it was secured. Permanent. No! Crawford must have seen him through the smoke. Don't! Please! I have children! Isaiah stepped back from the gate. His face remained expressionless. So did the people you killed, he said quietly, too quietly for Crawford to hear. This is murder! Reed's voice cracked. This is... A coughing fit cut him off. No, Isaiah said, still quiet, still calm. This is consequence. He turned away, started walking toward where the others had gathered at the tree line. Behind him, the screaming continued, then gradually faded, replaced by the sound of collapsing timbers and roaring flames. Ruth walked beside him. You did right. Isaiah said nothing. He was not sure what right meant anymore. The group had assembled in scattered clusters beneath the pines. 300 people, some injured, some carrying children, all waiting. We need to move, Elias said when Isaiah reached them. Follow the plan. Due west. Isaiah nodded, started to give orders. Then someone ran from the darkness, one of the scouts they had sent ahead, a young man named Thomas. His eyes were wild. Lights, Thomas gasped. At the swamp edge, torches, maybe 20 of them. The group went silent. How? Martha demanded. How could they know already? They couldn't. Elias looked at Isaiah. Unless someone told them. Ruth finished the thought. Her voice carried no surprise, just bitter acceptance. Someone gave us up. Isaiah felt cold spread through his chest. Before tonight? Had to be. Thomas nodded frantically. They're positioned, set up, like they've been waiting. Who? Caleb asked. Who would... Does it matter? Ruth cut him off. What matters is they're there, between us and the route. Isaiah pushed through the crowd, climbed a small rise where he could see better. Dawn was beginning to break in the east. The sky shifted from black to deep gray, and there, at the swamp's edge, maybe half a mile distant, torchlight flickered. Thomas was right. The lights were not searching. They were stationary, deliberate, positioned. There's more, Thomas said behind him. I circled around, saw wagons on the east road. Insurance wagons. Isaiah turned. Insurance? The kind that come after fires, to assess damage, pay claims. Thomas swallowed hard. They were already there, waiting, like they knew. The implications settled over the group like physical weight. The prison was supposed to burn, Martha said slowly. They wanted it to burn. Why? Someone asked. Doesn't matter why. Isaiah's voice cut through the confused murmuring. What matters is they're ready for us. This was not just leaked. This was planned. Then what do we do? Caleb's voice shook. We can't go back. We can't go forward. We go deeper. Ruth pointed south, away from the swamp edge, away from the planned route, into the worst parts, where the water runs black and the ground don't hold. We'll die in there, someone protested. Maybe. Ruth's tone did not change. But we'll definitely die out here. Isaiah looked at the burning prison behind them, at the torchlight ahead, at the 300 faces watching him for direction. They were not escaping anymore. They were being herded, hunted. Whatever came next would not be freedom. It would be survival, if they were lucky. South, Isaiah said. Everyone, now! The group turned away from the swamp edge, away from the plan they had built over weeks of secret preparation, into the deep country, where the water turned to quicksand, and the trees grew so thick that daylight never fully penetrated. Dawn broke fully as they moved. The sky turned pale gold. Birds started singing. Behind them, the mouth continued burning. Ahead of them, unknown territory stretched dark and waiting. And somewhere in between, slave catchers tightened their circle. The deep swamp closed around them like a fist. Isaiah crouched beneath a cypress overhang, watching Martha clean burns on Caleb's arm. The boy had carried a torch too long during the escape. The skin had blistered red and angry. "Hold still," Martha whispered. She tore strips from her dress, soaked them in brown swamp water. "This'll hurt." Caleb bit down on a stick, did not make a sound when she wrapped the wounds. All around them, similar scenes played out. Ruth moved between clusters of injured people. Her hands worked quickly, efficiently. She had brought nothing from the prison except knowledge of which plants stopped bleeding, which leaves drew infection from wounds. A woman named Sarah sat with her head between her knees, smoke inhalation. Her breathing came in wet rattles. 2 older men showed signs of heat exhaustion. A young girl had twisted her ankle badly in the flight. She would not be running again soon. Isaiah counted the faces he could see. Maybe 280. 20 people had not made it into the deep country, either caught by the waiting patrols or lost in the darkness. He did not let himself wonder which. The sun climbed higher. Heat built despite the shade. Mosquitoes descended in clouds. Nobody spoke above a whisper. Then Samuel Pike stood up. Pike was a broad-shouldered man in his 30s. He had worked in the prison's forge before it burned. Strong, quick-tempered, useful in a fight, but dangerous otherwise. "This is madness," Pike's voice carried across the gathered survivors. "Sitting here like rabbits waiting for dogs." Isaiah looked up. "Keep your voice down." "Why?" Pike stepped forward. "So we can hide better? So we can die quieter?" Several people shifted nervously. Martha pulled Caleb closer. "We need to rest," Isaiah said. His tone stayed level. "People are hurt. We moved hard all night." "And now we stop?" Pike interrupted. "Now we give them time to organize? To bring more men?" "What would you do?" Elias asked from where he sat. "Run until we drop?" "I'd run north." Pike pointed through the trees. "Split up. Scatter. Make them chase 300 different targets instead of one group." "We're stronger together," Ruth said. "We're slower together." Pike's jaw tightened. "Easier to track. Easier to surround. You want to abandon the children?" Martha's voice turned sharp. "The injured? Just leave them?" "I want to live." Pike met her glare without flinching. "And I want everyone who can run to have that chance. Instead of dying because we're trying to drag along people who can't keep pace." A rumble of anger passed through the group. Someone spat in Pike's direction, but others nodded. Isaiah saw it. Fear made people honest. Some wanted to scatter, wanted to maximize their individual odds, even if it meant abandoning the group. "There's another option." Isaiah stood slowly. His legs ached from the night's flight. "We don't run. We strike." Everyone turned to look at him. "Strike what?" Pike asked. "The patrols, the camps." Isaiah gestured vaguely west. "They're hunting us, setting up positions, which means they have supplies, horses, weapons." "You want to attack slave catchers?" Someone laughed bitterly. "With what? We got nothing." "We got surprise." Isaiah looked around the group. "They think we're running scared, trying to hide. They're not expecting us to come at them." "Because it's suicide," Pike said flatly. "Maybe?" Isaiah nodded. "Or maybe it's the only way we last more than a few days. Out here with no food, no weapons, no medicine. How long before we're too weak to fight back?" Silence followed. Everyone knew he was right. They had escaped with nothing but the clothes they wore. No supplies, no plan beyond immediate flight. If we hit their camps, Isaiah continued, we get food, guns, horses for the injured. We slow them down while we move faster. And lose people doing it, Pike shot back. Guaranteed. We'll lose people either way. Ruth stood beside Isaiah. At least this way we fight on our terms. This is insane. Pike shook his head. You're asking people to throw themselves at armed men. I'm asking people to survive. Isaiah's voice hardened. However, that looks. The argument broke into smaller discussions. Clusters formed. Voices rose despite the danger. Pike gathered supporters quickly. Maybe 40 people. Those young enough to run. Strong enough to believe in their individual chances. Another group coalesced around an older woman named Helen, former house servant. Literate, careful. She wanted to hide deep in the swamp, build shelters, wait for the hunt to pass. About 60 people moved toward her. That left roughly 180 with Isaiah. Those too injured to run fast. Those with children. Those who believed fighting was the only option left. Caleb pulled away from his mother, walked to Isaiah's side. "What are you doing?" Martha demanded. "Staying with Isaiah." Caleb's voice did not waver. "Baby, no, I'm not a baby." Caleb looked at her. "And I'm not hiding anymore." Martha's face crumpled, but she did not argue further. She moved to stand with Helen's group. Her eyes never left her son. Isaiah wanted to send Caleb with his mother, wanted to order the boy to hide, stay safe. But he saw the set of Caleb's jaw, the way the boy's hands had stopped shaking. This was not youthful rebellion. This was decision. "All right," Pike addressed his faction. "We head north. Move fast. Meet in Ohio if we make it." "We go deeper south," Helen said. "Find solid ground. Build what we need." Both groups looked at Isaiah. "We go west." Isaiah pointed along the river. "Stay near water. Hit the first patrol camp we find." "You'll all die," Pike said. "Not cruel, just stating fact." "Maybe." Isaiah met his eyes. "But we'll die moving forward, not running away." Pike's expression flickered. Something like respect crossed his face, then hardened back into certainty. "Good luck," Pike said. He turned to his people. "Let's move." Helen's group melted into the deeper swamp without ceremony. Quiet, careful, already practicing invisibility. That left Isaiah with 120 people. Caleb, Ruth, Elias, Thomas, Sarah with her damaged lungs, the girl with the twisted ankle, mothers with children, older men who had survived the prison through pure stubbornness. Not an army, barely a group, but they were moving forward, and that mattered. The sun reached its peak. Midday heat pressed down through the canopy. Somewhere in the distance, dogs barked. The hunt was organizing. "West," Isaiah said quietly. They moved along the river, single file, slow, methodical. The slave patrol camp sat in a clearing 2 miles upriver. Isaiah watched from behind a fallen oak. The afternoon sun slanted through Spanish moss, cast long shadows across packed earth. 4 wagons formed a rough square. A cook fire burned in the center. 6 men moved around the camp. White men, armed. 2 carried rifles. The others wore pistols on their belts. Chained people sat near the wagons. Maybe 15 captives. Men and women. Some looked freshly caught. Others showed signs of longer imprisonment. All wore iron. "How many guards?" Elias whispered beside Isaiah. 6 visible. "Might be more in the wagons. We got 120 people. They got 6. They got guns." Isaiah studied the camp layout. "We rush in, people die. Need to be smarter." Ruth crouched on Isaiah's other side. She had found wild garlic in the swamp, crushed it between her fingers. "The one by the fire keeps drinking. See how he sways?" Isaiah saw it. A heavy-set man with a red beard. He tilted a jug back, wiped his mouth, laughed at something another guard said. "Can you make him sleep?" Isaiah asked. "Not from here." Ruth considered. But if someone got close to their water supply... Thomas appeared behind them, silent despite his size. He carried a thick branch stripped of bark. When? Dusk. Isaiah pointed to where the sun hung above the trees. Another hour. Light fades. They'll be cooking. Relaxed. And if they're not? Elias asked. Then we adapt. They withdrew deeper into the brush. Isaiah gathered the group leaders, explained the plan, kept it simple. Simplicity survived contact with chaos. Complexity fell apart. Ruth would poison the water barrels. Thomas would lead the main rush when guards collapsed. Elias would free the chained captives. Caleb would stay back with the children and injured. Caleb opened his mouth to protest, saw Isaiah's expression, closed it again. The sun crept lower. Shadows lengthened. Isaiah's group spread out around the clearing, positioned behind trees, in tall grass, anywhere that offered cover. Ruth slipped forward, low to the ground, moving during moments when all guards looked elsewhere. She reached the water barrels near the wagons. Her hands worked quickly, adding crushed leaves and roots from pouches she had filled in the swamp. A guard turned. Ruth froze, became part of the wagon's shadow. The guard scratched his neck, spat, turned back to the fire. Ruth completed her work, slipped away, rejoined Isaiah behind the oak. Done, she breathed. Now they waited. Minutes crawled past. The guards prepared their evening meal, beans and salt pork. The smell drifted across the clearing, made Isaiah's empty stomach twist. None of them had eaten since before the prison burned. The red-bearded man dipped a cup into the water barrel, drank deeply, refilled it, drank again. 2 other guards followed suit. The water looked clean, tasted normal. 15 minutes later, the red-bearded man sat down heavily, shook his head like clearing cobwebs. You all right? Another guard asked. Tired. Just suddenly tired. You've been drinking all day. Not that much. But the bearded man's eyes were glazing. His head nodded forward. A second guard stumbled, caught himself on a wagon wheel. His rifle clattered to the ground. What the hell? The remaining conscious guards looked at each other. Confusion replaced ease. One smart guard reached for his pistol, started toward the water barrel. Isaiah stood. Now! His people erupted from the brush. No war cries, no shouting, just sudden movement from every direction. The smart guard spun, raised his pistol. Thomas hit him from the side. The branch caught the man across the temple. He went down hard. Another guard fired wildly. The shot went high. Caleb's mother, Martha, tackled him before he could aim again. 3 others piled on, wrestled the gun away. 2 guards ran, made it maybe 20 yards before Isaiah's people brought them down. Not killed, just overwhelmed by numbers. The whole thing took less than 2 minutes. Isaiah walked into the clearing, his heart hammered, but his hands stayed steady. Anyone hurt? A few scrapes. One man had caught an elbow to the nose. Blood ran down his face, but he waved away concern. The captives, Isaiah said. Elias was already working on the chains. He used keys taken from unconscious guards. Iron cuffs fell away one by one. A woman stood shakily, rubbed her wrists where the metal had bitten, looked around at her rescuers with wide eyes. You're free, Ruth told her. We all are. The woman's face crumpled. She covered her mouth, made sounds that might have been laughter or sobs or both. More chains clattered to the ground. 15 captives became 15 free people. They stumbled, embraced each other. Some fell to their knees. Then the reunions began. A young mother from Isaiah's group recognized her sister among the freed captives. Their scream of recognition carried across the clearing. They ran together, collided, held each other so tightly Isaiah thought they might break. An older man found his son. The boy could not have been more than 16. They did not speak, just gripped each other's shoulders, foreheads pressed together. Two women discovered they had been separated from the same plantation, shipped to the mouth on different wagons. They had thought each other dead. Now they sat together on the ground, held hands, whispered names of people lost. Isaiah watched families knit back together, watched strangers become something more through shared survival. For the first time since the prison burned, people smiled. The group ransacked the camp systematically, found salted meat, hardtack, dried fruit, ammunition for the captured guns, medical supplies, blankets. In one wagon, Elias discovered ownership papers, bills of sale, transport manifests, documents that turned human beings into property. "Burn them," Isaiah said. They built the fire high, fed it every scrap of paper that claimed ownership over flesh and bone. The documents curled, blackened, turned to ash. Someone started singing, low and rhythmic. A work song transformed into celebration. Others joined. The melody wove through the clearing. Full darkness fell. The fire burned bright. People ate, rested. For the first time since escape, tension eased from shoulders. Fear stepped back from eyes. Isaiah sat slightly apart, watched the scene. Caleb approached, sat beside him without asking permission. "We won," the boy said. "We survived one fight." "That's more than yesterday." Isaiah could not argue. He looked at the freed captives, at his own people sharing food, sharing hope. Maybe this was possible. Not just survival, but actual resistance. Hit the patrols, free the captured, disrupt the system one camp at a time. Maybe they could build something. The thought frightened him more than the fighting had. Hope felt dangerous, like a weakness that could be exploited. But watching Martha reunite with a cousin she had thought sold south 5 years ago, Isaiah let himself imagine it anyway. What came after resistance, after survival? What life looked like when you stopped running? Ruth sat on his other side. "You did good. We got lucky. We were smart. There's a difference. This time. One time is all we got. Then we get another time. Then another." Ruth gestured at the gathering. "Look at them. When's the last time you saw people look like that?" Isaiah could not remember. Maybe never. The night deepened. Laughter rose from the fireside. Real laughter. Not the bitter kind that hid pain. The kind that came from relief, from sudden joy. Isaiah closed his eyes, let himself hear it. Let himself believe they might actually make this work. Before dawn, while most people slept, a distant gunshot cracked through the darkness. Single. Sharp. Then, silence. The gunshot woke Isaiah before full dawn. He sat up, reached for the rifle he had taken from the patrol camp. Others stirred around him. "Just one shot," Elias said quietly. "Might be nothing. Might be." But Isaiah's gut twisted. He stood, moved through the sleeping forms toward where they had posted sentries. He found the position empty. No guard, no sign of struggle. Just footprints leading away from camp. Fresh. Made within the last hour. Thomas joined him, studied the tracks. Someone left. Who was on watch? Samuel Pike. Was supposed to wake his replacement at dawn. Isaiah followed the footprints. They headed east, away from the camp, moving quickly based on the stride length. Not sneaking. Running. The trail led to a creek. There the prints disappeared. Either Samuel waded upstream, or someone picked him up. "He ran," Thomas said. No question in his voice. "Maybe he got scared. Maybe nothing." Thomas spat. "Man runs from his own people before dawn. There's only one reason." Isaiah wanted to argue. Found he could not. The evidence spoke plainly. Samuel Pike had stood watch, then fled. No note, no warning. Just gone. They returned to camp, woke the leaders, explained what they had found. "We need to move," Elias said immediately. "If he's telling them where we are?" "We don't know that for certain," Martha interrupted. "We know enough." Ruth stood. began gathering her medical supplies. Debate later. Move now. Isaiah agreed. Wake everyone. Quiet. Take only what you can carry. We head deeper into the swamp. The camp mobilized. People rolled blankets, collected food. Parents woke children gently, tried to keep them calm. They were halfway through breaking camp when hoofbeats echoed in the distance. Multiple horses, coming fast. "Run!" Isaiah shouted. Discipline shattered. People scattered. Some grabbed children and fled. Others froze. A few reached for weapons. The militia burst into the clearing from 3 directions. 20 armed men on horseback. They wore no uniforms but carried military rifles. Slave catchers turned hunters. The leader fired into the air. The shot cracked like thunder. Nobody move! But people were already moving. Running. Screaming. A woman sprinted for the trees. A rider cut her off. Rope whipped out. Caught her around the shoulders. She went down hard. Isaiah raised his rifle. Aimed at the rider. Before he could fire, someone slammed into him from behind. He hit the ground. The rifle skittered away. More shots, more screams. Chaos consumed the clearing. Isaiah rolled. Saw Thomas grappling with a militiaman who had dismounted. They traded blows. Heavy. Brutal. The militiaman drew a knife. Thomas caught his wrist. They struggled. Ruth ran past, carrying her medicine bag, heading toward children trapped by the wagons. A rider bore down on her. "Ruth!" Isaiah shouted. She did not hear, or heard, but did not stop. The rider's horse knocked her sideways. She stumbled, fell. The medicine bag spilled open. Bottles shattered. Ruth tried to rise. The rider circled back, drew his pistol. Isaiah lurched to his feet. "No!" The pistol fired. Once. Ruth jerked, clutched her chest, fell back. Something broke in Isaiah's mind. A dam holding back fury. He ran toward her, shoved past fleeing people, ducked under a swinging rifle butt. Another militiaman stepped into his path. Younger than the others, maybe 20. He raised his rifle. "Stop right there!" Isaiah did not stop. The young militiaman fired. Missed. Isaiah crashed into him. They went down together. Fists, elbows. Isaiah fought like a man possessed. He got on top. Wrapped hands around the militiaman's throat. Squeezed. The young man's face turned red. Then purple. Someone kicked Isaiah in the ribs. He rolled away. Gasped. Looked up into a rifle barrel. The militia captain sat on his horse. Older. Gray-bearded. He aimed the rifle at Isaiah's head. Enough. Isaiah stared at him, panting, waiting for the shot. It did not come. The captain gestured. 2 men dragged Isaiah to his feet, bound his hands behind his back with rough rope. Around the clearing, the fight ended. Most of Isaiah's people were caught, tied, forced to their knees. Some had escaped into the swamp. Isaiah could not tell how many. Maybe 20, maybe fewer. Bodies lay scattered. Isaiah counted 4. No, 5. People who had eaten beside the fire last night, who had laughed, who had believed they might actually survive. Ruth was one of them. She lay still, eyes open, staring at nothing. Isaiah tried to go to her. The men holding him yanked him back. "Where's the boy?" the captain called out. "One of you was keeping a boy. Where is he?" Silence. The captain dismounted, walked to where Martha knelt, bound and bleeding from a cut above her eye. "I asked a question." Martha said nothing, her jaw set, defiant, even kneeling. The captain backhanded her. She sprawled sideways, spat blood. "There!" one of the militiamen pointed. Caleb ran from behind a wagon, heading for the tree line. His thin legs pumped, almost made it. A rider caught him easily, scooped him up. The boy kicked, screamed. The rider laughed. "Let him go," Martha shrieked. "He's just a boy." "He's property." The captain examined Caleb like livestock. Healthy, young, fetch a good price. They threw Caleb into one of the wagons. chained him to the sidewall. His eyes found his mother, found Isaiah, full of terror and betrayal. Isaiah looked away, could not bear it. The captain walked among the captives, counted heads. 23. Not bad. Samuel said there'd be more. So it was confirmed. Samuel Pike had sold them out. What about the rest? A militiaman asked. Let them run. Swamp will kill most. We'll catch the others eventually. The captain turned to Isaiah. You're the one who led them? Isaiah said nothing. Strong, silent type. The captain smiled without warmth. We'll see how long that lasts. He raised his pistol, aimed at Isaiah's leg, fired. The bullet tore through Isaiah's thigh. White-hot pain exploded up his spine. He collapsed, bit his tongue to keep from screaming. Load them up, the captain ordered. We ride in 10 minutes. They dragged Isaiah toward a wagon. His leg left a blood trail in the dirt. The pain made his vision swim, made the world tilt sideways. Through blurred eyes, he saw Ruth's body one last time. Saw the medicine bottles scattered around her. Saw her hand stretched out like she had been reaching for something. They threw him into the wagon. The impact jarred his wounded leg. This time, he did scream. Caleb huddled in the corner. Tears streaked his face. Isaiah, I'm sorry. Isaiah barely recognized his own voice. I'm so sorry. The wagon lurched into motion. Through the slats, Isaiah watched the clearing recede, watched the freed captives from yesterday get chained again, watched everything they had fought for collapse. The sun climbed higher. Noon arrived. The wagons rolled east, taking them back toward civilization, toward markets and auctions and iron. Isaiah's leg throbbed. Each bump in the road sent fresh agony through him. Blood soaked his pants, dripped onto the wagon bed. You need to stop the bleeding, Caleb whispered. Don't matter. You'll die. Probably. But Caleb crawled closer, tore strips from his own shirt, tied them around Isaiah's thigh. The pressure helped. Some. The wagons stopped twice, once to rest the horses, once to pick up 2 more captives, stragglers caught fleeing through the swamp. By sunset, they reached a main road. The captain called halt, set up camp. They left the captives chained in the wagons, posted guards, started a fire. Isaiah drifted in and out of consciousness. Fever took hold. His leg felt like it was burning from the inside out. In lucid moments, he thought about Ruth, about her steady hands, her quiet strength, about how she had run toward those children even knowing the risk. He thought about the people who escaped, hoped some made it, knew most would not. He thought about Caleb, about Martha, about everyone he had led into this disaster, should have scattered, should have run north immediately, should never have believed they could fight back and win. One victory. That was all they got. One single victory before everything fell apart. The fever climbed. Isaiah's thoughts tangled. He saw the prison burning again. Saw the gate locked. Saw the overseer's face through the flames. Had it been worth it? Any of it? He could not tell anymore. The stars came out, cold and distant. The guard's fire crackled. Somewhere an owl called. Isaiah closed his eyes. Let the darkness take him. If he died here, at least he would not have to watch what came next. Isaiah woke to darkness and pain. Not the wagon, not chained. He lay on damp earth, smelled wood smoke and wet leaves. His eyes adjusted. Overhead, pine branches swayed against stars. A small fire burned nearby. Figures moved around it. Quiet voices murmured. He tried to sit up. His legs screamed protest. The makeshift bandages were gone. Someone had replaced them with proper wrapping. Clean cloth, tight enough to slow bleeding. Easy. A hand pressed his shoulder. Thomas's face appeared above him. Don't move too quick. How? Isaiah's throat was raw. How did I get here? We came back for you. Thomas handed him a canteen. Elias led us. Waited until the militia made camp, hit them after midnight. Isaiah drank. Water had never tasted better. The others? Thomas's expression darkened. Some, not all. Isaiah forced himself upright, despite the agony in his leg. The fire illuminated maybe 30 people. No, 40. Scattered in small groups. Most bore fresh wounds, bandaged arms, bruised faces, eyes that had seen too much. Martha sat near the fire's edge. Caleb curled against her side, both alive, both free again. But Ruth's face was missing. And others, too many others. How many did we lose? Isaiah asked. 15 dead in the fight. 8 captured we couldn't reach. Thomas fed the fire with a small branch. Another dozen scattered who we haven't found. Might never find. From 80 this morning to 40 now. Half gone in a single day. Isaiah scanned the survivors. Some met his gaze. Others looked away. He saw no blame in their faces. Just exhaustion, grief. The hollow stare of people pushed past their limits. Elias approached. The old boatman moved with a limp now. His left arm hung in a sling. You're awake. Good. We need to talk. About what? About what happens next. Elias crouched beside the fire. We can't keep doing this. Can't keep fighting and running and losing people. The militia knows these swamps now. They'll hunt us until nobody's left. So what do you suggest? Isaiah's voice came out harder than intended. Surrender? I'm suggesting we think. Elias met his stare without flinching. We got maybe 3 days before they find us again. Less if Samuel's still talking. We need a plan that doesn't end with everyone dead. Other survivors drifted closer, listening, waiting. Martha spoke up. Elias is right. We can't win by running. Can't win by fighting. They're too many, and we're too few. Then what can we win by? Isaiah already knew the answer, had been circling it since the militia rode away with those wagons. By making them afraid. Thomas's voice was quiet, but certain. Not afraid of losing a fight. Afraid of what it costs to keep hunting us. Silence settled over the group, heavy with understanding. A young woman named Grace broke it. You're talking about going back. Not just going back. Isaiah felt something crystallize in his mind. The fever fog lifted, left behind cold clarity. We burned the mouth, showed them we could strike where they felt safe, but they rebuilt that safety. Sent militia after us like we were animals to be rounded up. He paused. Let the words settle. We need to break that safety permanent. Make them understand there's places they can't go, things they can't do, not without paying a price they won't stomach. Caleb lifted his head from his mother's shoulder. The prison's already burned. Nothing left but ruins. Exactly. Isaiah looked around the circle. That's why they won't expect us to go back. Why they won't guard it heavy. It's just charred wood and memories now. And? Martha's eyes narrowed. What good does going back do? We don't go back to hide. Isaiah worked it through as he spoke. Let the plan take shape. We go back as bait. Leave trails. Start rumors in the quarters nearby. Make sure the militia hears that survivors are using the ruins as a gathering place. Understanding dawned on several faces. They'll come. Thomas nodded slowly. Can't resist. Chance to catch everyone at once. And when they come, Isaiah continued, they'll find the ruins different than they left them. That land's still soaked with oil from storage barrels. Add more. Dig pits. Set traps in the burned buildings. Make the whole place a killing ground. That's madness. An older man named Jacob shook his head. You're talking about fighting trained militia on ground they know. No. Isaiah kept his voice steady. I'm talking about making ground they think they know turn against them. Making them afraid to chase us anywhere. Making the cost so high they'd rather let us disappear than keep hunting. Elias studied him. You really think it'll work? I think it's the only thing that might. Isaiah looked at each face around the fire. We tried running. We tried hiding. We tried scattering. All it did was make us easier to pick off. The only way we survive is if they decide hunting us ain't worth it anymore. And if we fail? Grace asked. If they kill us all? Then at least we die making them bleed for it. Isaiah's leg throbbed with each heartbeat. Reminder of what mercy had cost him. At least we die choosing the terms. Martha pulled Caleb closer. Her jaw set. I'm in. They took my boy once. I won't run and let them take him again. I'm in. Thomas stood. Got nothing left to lose anyway. Others nodded. Murmured agreement. Not everyone. Some still looked uncertain, afraid, but enough. Maybe 30 of the 40. Those who don't want to come, Isaiah said. I understand. Head north. Find the ones who scattered. Get as far away as you can. No shame in choosing life over vengeance. 10 people stood. Jacob among them. They gathered their meager belongings, exchanged quiet goodbyes. Isaiah watched them melt into the darkness. Part of him envied their choice. The simpler path. Run and hope and pray. But he was done hoping, done praying, done believing the world would show mercy it had never offered. The remaining 30 drew closer to the fire, waited for direction. We move before midnight. Isaiah gripped Thomas's shoulder, used it to lever himself upright. His wounded leg barely held his weight. Need to reach the mouth by tomorrow night. Set everything up before the militia hears the rumors. You can't walk on that leg. Grace gestured at the blood-stained bandage. Then, I'll crawl. Isaiah tested his weight. Agony shot up his thigh. He ignored it. We got maybe one chance at this. One chance to make them understand we ain't prey anymore. Elias began distributing supplies. What little remained: dried meat, hardtack, 2 canteens between 30 people. Martha helped Isaiah fashion a crutch from a thick branch. It was crude, uncomfortable, but it worked. Caleb appeared at Isaiah's elbow. I'm staying with you. Your mama needs you safe. My mama needs them to stop hunting us. The boy's voice held steel. You taught me that, when you locked that gate. Isaiah had no answer for that. Just gripped the boy's shoulder, felt the weight of every choice that led here. The fire burned down to embers. Stars wheeled overhead. The night grew colder. At 1:45 midnight, they began moving. 30 people, most wounded, all exhausted, heading back toward the place where their nightmare had started, where it would end, one way or another. The ruins emerged from the pre-dawn mist like broken teeth. Charred timbers jutted skyward. Collapsed walls formed jagged silhouettes against the graying eastern sky. The smell hit Isaiah first, old smoke and something worse beneath it. Death never fully left a place like this. Thomas raised a hand. The group halted. Looks empty, he whispered. Isaiah studied the remains. The main gate stood twisted on its hinges. The guard tower had collapsed into rubble. Most of the western wall was gone entirely. Nothing moved in the shadows. No watchfires. No voices. They abandoned it, Martha said. Her voice held strange satisfaction. Left it to rot. Good. Isaiah shifted his weight on the crutch. His leg had stopped bleeding, but the pain was constant now. White hot with each step. Means they won't expect us back. Elias moved forward cautiously. The others followed in 2s and 3s, picking their way through debris, avoiding the areas where floors had given way to cellars below. The yard where roll call once happened was now a field of ash. Isaiah remembered standing here, watching men beaten for looking up, for breathing wrong, for existing. He felt nothing looking at it now, just cold calculation. Spread out, he ordered quietly. Find what we can use. Oil barrels, rope, anything that burns, but stay quiet. Don't know who might be watching from the woods. The group dispersed. Grace and 2 others headed toward the storage shed. Thomas led a team to check the collapsed kitchen building. Martha kept Caleb close as they examined the eastern cell block. Isaiah made his way to what remained of the overseer's quarters. His crutch sank into soft ash with each step. The building's front wall had fallen in. The roof was mostly gone, but the back room stood partially intact. Inside, he found what he hoped for: 3 oil lamps, still full, a jar of matches wrapped in oilcloth, and in the corner, nearly buried under fallen boards, 2 more barrels of lamp oil. "Over here?" He kept his voice low. Thomas appeared in the doorway, saw the barrels. His expression hardened. "That'll do." They worked quickly, rolled the barrels into the yard. Grace's team returned carrying armfuls of rope, moldy canvas tarps, a bag of nails that had somehow survived the fire. "Kitchen had oil too," Grace reported. "Maybe 4 barrels. Heavy, though. Need help moving them. Leave them where they are for now." Isaiah scanned the ruins. His mind worked through possibilities. "We need to think about placement. Where they'll come from. Where we want them to go." Elias limped over. "They'll come through the main gate. Only way in wide enough for horses and wagons, unless they go around through the swamp." "They won't go through the swamp," Martha said. She held a long piece of iron pipe, rust-covered, sharp at one end. "Too slow. They'll want to trap us quick. Pin us against the ruins." Isaiah nodded. She was right. The militia would come fast and hard. Overwhelming force. That's what the system relied on. Always had. "So we make the gate a kill box," he pointed with his crutch. "Oil the ground heavy just inside. Run fire lines to the collapsed wall sections. When they come through, we light it. Trap them between flames and rubble." "What about the cell block?" Caleb asked. The boy stood near his mother, eyes taking in everything, learning. "Good question." Isaiah studied the eastern building. Its walls still stood, mostly. The cells inside would be dark, confusing to anyone not familiar with the layout. "We put oil in there too. Make it look like we're hiding inside. When they go in to search..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Thomas began organizing work crews. Some rolled oil barrels to positions around the yard. Others dug shallow pits near the gate, covered them with burned boards and ash. Not deep enough to kill, just enough to trip horses, create chaos. Grace and 2 others climbed into what remained of the guard tower. They carried rope. Within an hour, they'd rigged a simple tripwire system. Anyone entering the tower would bring the remaining walls down on themselves. The eastern sky grew lighter. Pink touched the horizon. "We're running out of dark," Elias warned. "Almost done." Isaiah watched Martha and Caleb string oil-soaked rope between the cell block and the western ruins. Fire lines, invisible in the ash and debris. "Just need to finish the..." A sound cut him off. Distant, rhythmic. Wagon wheels. Everyone froze. "Can't be," Thomas breathed. "Too soon. We haven't even started the rumors yet." But Isaiah understood. The militia hadn't needed rumors. They'd anticipated everything. Knew escaped slaves might try to regroup. Knew the ruins would draw them back, eventually. They'd been waiting, watching. And something had finally tipped them off. "Positions!" Isaiah ordered. His voice stayed level despite the ice in his chest. "Everyone in the cell block. Now!" "We're not ready," Grace protested. "Half the traps aren't set. The fire lines..." "Move!" Isaiah grabbed her shoulder. "We work with what we have. Get inside. Stay low. Don't make a sound." The group scrambled for the cell block entrance. Martha pulled Caleb along. Thomas helped 3 injured men who couldn't run. Elias grabbed the last oil lamp and followed. Isaiah took one final look around the yard. The barrels were positioned. The main fire line was complete. The pits were covered. Not perfect, but enough. Maybe. He turned toward the cell block. His leg nearly gave out. The crutch slipped in ash. He caught himself against a burned support beam. The wagon sounds grew louder, closer. Multiple vehicles. And voices now. Men calling to each other. Confident. Relaxed. Like they were heading to routine work. Isaiah forced himself forward. Each step agony. The cell block entrance loomed ahead. Dark doorway in darker wall. Almost there. A shout erupted from the direction of the gate. There! Movement in the east block. Footsteps. Running. Coming fast. Isaiah dove through the cell block entrance, landed hard on his wounded leg. White light exploded behind his eyes. He bit down on a scream. Hands grabbed him, pulled him deeper into shadow. Thomas and Elias. They dragged him behind a collapsed bunk frame. Through the doorway, torchlight flickered, growing brighter. Dawn broke over the ruins. Golden light spilled across ash and bone and broken stone. The militia had arrived. The first torch cleared the gate. Militia Captain Reed sat tall in his saddle. 3 wagons rolled behind him. Armed men walked alongside, maybe 20, all carrying rifles, all looking confident. They thought this would be easy. Isaiah watched through a gap in the cell block wall. His breathing stayed controlled, shallow. The pain in his leg had become a distant thing, separate from him. Reed scanned the ruins. His expression showed mild annoyance, like he'd expected better sport. "Spread out," he ordered. "Check every building. They're here somewhere, probably hiding in the cells." The men dismounted, tied horses to what remained of the fence posts. The wagons stopped just inside the gate, right where Isaiah had hoped. One militiaman kicked at debris. "Waste of time. Place is already burned." "That's the point," Reed said. He gestured toward the cell block. "They think ruins mean safety. Think we won't look here. That's where they're wrong." 6 men started toward the cell block, moving in pairs, weapons ready. Isaiah raised his hand. The survivors hidden throughout the building tensed, waiting. The first pair reached the fire line, rope buried in ash and soot. Invisible unless you knew where to look. Their boots touched it. Grace struck flint to steel in the darkness behind Isaiah. Sparks jumped, caught on oil-soaked cloth. Flame traveled down the hidden rope line faster than a man could run. The yard erupted. Fire raced along the ground, followed the paths they'd laid during the night, curved around the cell block, shot toward the gate where the wagons sat. The oil barrels near the entrance caught first. 1, then 2. The explosions weren't large, but they were loud. Sharp cracks that echoed off stone walls. Horses screamed, reared, broke their ties, and bolted. The 2 militiamen standing on the fire line looked down in confusion. Then their boots caught. Flames climbed trouser legs. They screamed, staggered backward, fell into more oil-soaked ground. "Ambush!" someone yelled. "It's a trap!" Reed wheeled his horse around, tried to retreat through the gate, but the wagons blocked the way. One had tipped when its horse bolted. Supplies spilled across the opening. Barrels, crates, a tangle of harness and wheel. The fire reached it. Another explosion. Bigger this time. Wood fragments flew. A wheel sailed through the air and crashed into the guard tower remains. The tripwire inside pulled taut. The tower's remaining wall, barely standing to begin with, groaned, shifted, then collapsed inward. 3 militiamen who'd climbed up for better vantage disappeared in a cloud of dust and stone. In the cell block, Thomas moved to the doorway, raised the iron pipe Martha had found. His face showed nothing. "Wait," Isaiah whispered. "Not yet." Outside, the militia scrambled for organization. Reed shouted orders. Men tried to form lines, but the ground itself fought them. Hidden pits gave way. Boards cracked. 2 men fell hard. 1 didn't get up. Fire climbed the collapsed kitchen building's remaining timbers. Thick, black smoke poured into the yard. Visibility dropped. Confusion spread. A militiaman ran blindly toward the cell block entrance, seeking cover, escape, anything. Thomas swung the pipe, connected with the man's temple. The militiaman crumpled without a sound. "Now they know we're here," Elias said from deeper in the shadows. "They always knew." Isaiah pulled himself upright on the crutch. "That's why they came." More explosions outside. The oil barrels they'd positioned around the yard catching in sequence, not coordinated, just chaos feeding on itself. Fire finding fuel wherever it could. Reed managed to rally 8 men near the western wall, away from the worst flames. They formed a defensive cluster, rifles up. "The cell block," Reed pointed. "That's where they are. Burn them out." The men advanced, careful now, testing ground before committing weight. They'd learned. Isaiah watched them come, counted steps, judged distance. The lead militiaman reached the secondary fire line, the one Grace had insisted on adding. Insurance, she'd called it. Isaiah nodded to her. She struck flint again. This line ran perpendicular to the first, cut across the yard from north to south. When it caught, it created a wall of flame between Reed's group and the cell block. The militiamen stopped short, faces orange in the firelight, trapped between burning buildings and burning ground. One tried to run through. His coat caught. He made it 3 steps before collapsing, rolling, screaming. Inside the cell block, Caleb turned away. Martha pulled him close, covered his ears. Isaiah understood the impulse, but he didn't look away. Couldn't. This was the choice they'd made, the path they'd chosen. He would witness all of it. The fires burned hotter. Smoke thickened. The ruins became an oven. Heat warped the air, made everything shimmer and dance. Reed tried to organize a retreat, shouted for his men to regroup at the gate. But the gate was blocked, burning, impassable. They were surrounded by their own weapons now. The same fire they'd used to terrorize, the same fear they'd inflicted. Poetic, Isaiah thought distantly, and terrible. By noon, the screaming had mostly stopped. Isaiah sat against the cell block's back wall, as far from the entrance as possible. The sounds coming from outside weren't human anymore, just animal pain, desperate and mindless. Thomas stood watch at the doorway. His expression had gone blank, protective shutdown. Some things the mind couldn't process, while remaining whole. "How many left?" Elias asked. Hard to say through the smoke. Thomas squinted. "Maybe 6, maybe less. They're trying to dig under the gate, get out that way. Will they make it?" Thomas didn't answer. Didn't need to. The fire had consumed everything. The wooden gate, the wagon blocking it, the ground around it. There was nowhere to dig that wasn't burning. The afternoon sun climbed higher. Smoke drifted east on the wind. Visible for miles, probably. Someone would see it. Come to investigate. "We need to leave," Grace said. She'd been quiet for hours. Before more arrive. Isaiah nodded slowly. "Everyone ready?" Murmurs of agreement. 40 people, injured, exhausted, traumatized, but alive. "The back wall has a gap," Elias reported. He'd scouted earlier. "Leads straight to the tree line. From there we can reach the river." "Then we split," Isaiah said. His voice sounded hollow, foreign. Small groups, different directions, never more than 3 together. "And you?" Martha asked. Isaiah looked at her, at Caleb, at all of them. "I'll head north, alone, draw attention if anyone's tracking." "That's suicide." "Maybe." He pulled himself upright. "But necessary." No one argued. They understood. Someone had to be the obvious target, the clear trail. Otherwise the militia would hunt them all equally. This way, they had a chance. They filed out through the back wall gap, one by one, moving quickly despite injuries. The tree line swallowed them. Within minutes, they'd scattered like smoke. Isaiah went last, paused at the gap, looked back at the ruins one final time. The yard was a crater of ash and bone. The buildings were skeletons of themselves. The gate stood open and empty now, a mouth that had finally stopped feeding. He turned away. By sunset, the ruins stood silent. No voices, no movement, just wind through broken stone and the slow settling of ash. The mouth would never open again. 7 years later, the Mississippi Delta, 1858. A small settlement of free blacks and sympathetic Quakers had formed along a tributary too shallow for commercial traffic. No name on any map, just a collection of houses built from river timber and determination. Isaiah went by Jacob now. Jacob Freeman, though the irony of the surname never sat quite right. Too obvious, too pointed. But the Quaker family who'd sheltered him that first winter had insisted every person deserved a name that stated truth plainly. So Jacob Freeman he became. He lived in a room behind the settlement's meeting house. Small space, clean, a bed, a table, 2 chairs, books lined shelves he'd built himself. The carpenter's skills had never left him, even if everything else had changed. On Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, children came. They arrived in groups of 4 or 5, ages ranging from 6 to 14. Some were children of freedmen. Others belonged to sympathetic families from neighboring farms who believed education shouldn't depend on skin color. Whatever the state said about it, Isaiah, Jacob, taught them to read. He sat now at the table, afternoon light filtering through the single window. 8 children occupied the floor space, sitting cross-legged. Slates balanced on knees, chalk dust already marking their clothes. "Sound it out," he said to a girl named Prudence, maybe 9 years old, gap-toothed and fierce. "Take your time." She frowned at the primer, moved her finger under the words. "The cat sat. Good. Keep going. On the—" She paused, looked up. "Matt? Matt. Yes. Very good." Prudence beamed. The other children shifted, eager for their turns. This was Isaiah's life now. These small victories, these careful progressions, teaching letters, building words, watching understanding dawn on young faces. It wasn't the life he'd imagined. Not during the escape, not during the burning, not during those first years of running, always looking over his shoulder, certain every stranger was a slave catcher in disguise. But it was real, and it was his. A boy named Thomas, no relation to the Thomas from before, though Isaiah still felt a twist in his chest every time he heard the name, raised his hand. "Yes? Mr. Freeman, is it true? About the prison that burned?" The room went quiet. The other children stared. Some had heard the stories. Others were curious now. Isaiah set down his own book, carefully. "What have you heard?" "My uncle says there was a slave prison, way south, called the Mouth. Says 300 people escaped and burned it down. Says no one ever rebuilt it. Says slave catchers won't go near where it was," another child added. A girl named Ruth, again the name, who sat in the back. "Says the ground's cursed now." Isaiah considered his response. The children watched him, waiting. "There are many stories," he said finally. "Some true, some exaggerated, some pure invention. You have to be careful which ones you believe." "But did it happen?" Thomas pressed. "Did people really escape like that?" "People escaped all the time," Isaiah said. "Still do. Taking freedom isn't one big action. It's 1,000 small ones, every day." That seemed to satisfy most of them. They returned to their slates, practicing letters, copying simple sentences. But Ruth kept watching him, something knowing in her expression, too perceptive for comfort. The lesson continued another hour. Grammar, simple arithmetic, a passage from the Bible, Ecclesiastes, which the Quakers approved and which Isaiah found appropriately ambiguous about most things. When the children filed out, chattering among themselves, Ruth lingered. "My father was there," she said quietly. Isaiah stilled. "Where?" "At the prison. The Mouth. He was one of the ones who escaped. Headed north. Made it to Canada eventually." "I see. He told me about a man. Said he never learned his real name. Everyone just called him the carpenter. Said this man planned everything. The poison, the fires, the final trap." Isaiah began collecting slates, stacking them neatly. Stories grow in the telling. My father doesn't exaggerate. Ruth moved closer. He said the carpenter disappeared after. Said people looked for him, to thank him, to follow him. But he was just gone. Like smoke. Maybe that was wise. Disappearing. Maybe. She paused. He also said the carpenter had a limp from being shot, that it never healed quite right. Isaiah's hand went to his leg unconsciously. The old wound, the one that still ached when rain came. That still made him favor his right side. Ruth smiled, small and sad. I won't tell anyone, Mr. Freeman. I just wanted you to know what my father said about being grateful, about how what happened there changed things, made people braver. She left before he could respond. Isaiah stood alone in the empty room, afternoon light fading to amber. Dust motes drifting through the air like ash. Changed things. Had it? Really? Slavery still existed, still ground people down, still treated human beings as property. The mouth had burned, but a dozen others probably took its place. Different names, same purpose. And yet, he thought about the children, how they came here freely, how they learned without fear of punishment, how Prudence had smiled when she read that simple sentence. He thought about settlements like this one, small, fragile, but real. Places where people built lives outside the system's immediate reach. He thought about the rumors Thomas had mentioned. Roots avoided, ground considered cursed. Fear, however superstitious, that still served as protection. Maybe change didn't come in grand gestures. Maybe it came in accumulated small ones. A child learning to read. A family choosing freedom. A prison that stayed burned. Outside, he heard laughter. The children playing in the evening light. Running. Shouting. Free in this moment at least. Isaiah, Jacob, moved to the window. Watched them. The settlement existed in a precarious space. Legal, but barely. Tolerated, but not accepted. One hostile neighbor, one changed law, one determined slave catcher. Any of these could end it. But for now, it stood. For now, children laughed. For now, he could teach them words that might, someday, become weapons of their own. Not perfect freedom. Not complete safety. Not the justice he'd once imagined in flames and ash, but real nonetheless. He turned back to his table, opened his own book. The Bible again. Different passage this time. They have sown the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind. Isaiah closed the book, set it aside. Outside, the laughter continued. Innocent, hopeful, unaware of what it had cost to make this moment possible. He listened until full dark fell, until the children went home, until silence settled over the settlement. Then he lit a lamp, prepared tomorrow's lessons, and allowed himself to believe, just for tonight, that the burning had mattered, that the price had purchased something lasting, that 300 people fleeing into darkness had, in some small way, bent the world toward light. I hope you found that story powerful. Leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. I have handpicked 2 stories for you that are even more powerful. Have a great day.